there's someone at the door. Should we let him in? Door.
Did you take that off just now?
Wait a second. I'm gonna increase the volume a little bit. Can't really hear.
Old school.
Yeah. It's cool to see all the ancient technology in this house.
It's not that ancient.
It's not that old, but you know, technology progresses quite fast.
Yeah.
And this is just a couple of years old, and you can tell how old it is. This is the door buzzer for in this house. It used to be on the wall over there.
I don't think it even worked properly when we got in.
No, it didn't. And it may be because I've actually cut through the cable when I dug the trench for the internet wire. But yeah, as you can see, this house is a little bit of in disarray at the moment. Because we started to renovate it. And before we get too far with it, we decided, well, let's take you through it so we could talk about what we did to this house to make it more energy efficient and what we're planning to do with sort of the layout to make it work better for what we are planning to do with it. So this is we call it the common house, or as some people have suggested, the Roost.
Yeah, the Roost I think is a cool name.
It's an interesting name because it relates to flock. The idea behind this house is that this will become a place that a lot of people that are using this land will be able to come and kind of use the kitchen together, use the living room, and then in their own individual places that they're staying on the land, they might not need a big kitchen or a big living room or a big deck on the house, and the footprint can be much smaller. So this has always intrigued us about living communally, is to be able to share those kinds of resources because they help bring you together in a common place with a purpose, for example, cooking, instead of everyone just cooking in their own individual houses, or more like ordering in these days. It's nicer to come together for those kinds of things and share the space, but still have like your own space next to that.
Now let's be honest, like this is a beautiful place to start with, even though it's messy right now.
Yes, so we've looked at some properties before that I was talking to Summer or even Joey, and they're saying like, well, the land's great, but we might have to take down this house and start over because, you know, what we have here are actually some really nice bones to work with. And we'll talk about how to make it how we've made it more energy efficient and what we're planning to do with the layout. But this house, to begin with, is what they call a Lindell cedar home. So the whole house is cedar, except from like the walls that have the normal studs in it. But these big beams that you see here are glue laminated beams that carry most of the load of the house. So we have a cedar plank ceiling here. And the siding on the house is also cedar, which is great because it doesn't rot as fast. Insects don't like to burrow in it. It's a great wood to use, although it's not really local to this area. This house is kind of more like a design that you would see in California with the big windows and stuff like that. Here, not so great because you want a higher pitch on your roof. This pitch is only 412, so it's quite a flat roof.
That's like the minimum for this area.
It's like the minimum for like, if you have a skylight that you want to install, for example, it's like you need a minimum of 412. Because if you go flatter than that, it's just not going to drain the water off of it. So the people that used to live in this house before us, they used to treat this more as a summer home, and they would leave in the winter. So they didn't really have to heat it. So they didn't really care much about the energy efficiency of it. Plus, it was 1990 that this house was built, and they just had different kinds of building practices. So when we came to the house and we wanted to heat it in the winter, we looked at the energy efficiency of the house because it was taking a lot of money to heat the house to a comfortable degree. And as soon as you would heat it, because the way it was built, the heat would leave the building and you just have to, you know, pay a lot for heating. So one of the first things that we looked at was better insulation. And insulation usually happens on the walls and in the ceilings, but as you could see, most of this house, or a big chunk of this house, is actually just windows. I can add tons of insulation to this wall right here, but it doesn't really matter if there's like a window over there that, you know, is leaking a bunch of air into the building and is not very energy resistant. So energy resistance or heat transferable stuff is like defined by like an R value. These walls are like R20, And it basically is like a standard 2x6 wall with the insulation in it, fiberglass. A window would be more like R3. So that tells you that like heat has a much easier time to get through a window than it has to get through a wall. So one of the things that we looked at, since these windows are so big, it made the most sense to replace the windows. And what we went with is a high energy efficient window that has more like an R7. So I think the U value, because the windows are based on U values, the U value is like 0.17. And this glass is triple pane, and that helps significantly with the performance. These are fiberglass
and these don't
plastic.
Open either, which helps.
Yeah, so that helps in your seal, and it helps with the budget, because a window that opens is about twice the cost. And if you can imagine, like 8 windows here, that would have cost a lot of money. So before, we used to have this little section here that opens and closes, and we decided to just go one single glass, and that would save a lot of money, and we'd be way more energy efficient on our side here.
You could see like there's a lot not finished, like you had to take out all the...
So what you're seeing here is that, so once you set the window, there's just a little gap, and what people will usually do is they spray foam that, ideally all the way, and I did it so much here that it even came out, which this is really easy to remove, as you can see. And what we'll do after this is to make it even more airtight, because even though you put foam in here, it still has some gaps. So what we'll do is we'll put a piece of tape on the window, connecting it to the wood. And that way it's gonna be air sealed, and then a piece of trim will cover this so you don't see all that ugly tape and foam.
The trim is going to be a lot of work. There's a lot of window.
Yeah, especially on this wall. It's like mostly window, and it's at an angle. So, I still have to remove some of this drywall and some of this insulation, because as you can see, there's still all these weird gaps in here that, who knows, like insects or, cold air might be able to come through. So there's still a lot of work to do on this wall. But that's one of the biggest things that we identified as making this house more energy efficient, is by replacing the windows and the doors and replacing them with something that is really well made. These windows are from Alpen Windows. They are out of Colorado, and they're more like a European style window that has the tilt and turn functionality on some of the windows that do open, like here in the kitchen, for example. So this would open this way. And then if you go on the top, it would just tilt like this. And what's funny about this window brand is that they come with these little balloons attached to them. So you have these 2 wires here. Those are 2 little tubes, and they have a little balloon because there is air or gas between the glass. And when they're transporting it over the Rocky Mountains, like the gas could expand and contract, and the balloon is there to like aid with some of that expansion and contraction. And once you have them on the altitude that you want to install them, you can crimp this, basically seal the tube, and then you could tuck it away into the window. And it's just one of the funny things that these windows come with. But yeah, that's a big one. Another part of the window package is skylights, and skylights are like a different kind of beast. This company doesn't really make skylights, so we had to go with a different brand. And these skylights are made by Facro, I believe. And we couldn't get skylights that were super energy efficient, so we got more regular skylights. But because those would be just so expensive, you were looking at like $4,000 per skylight in order to get an energy efficient one.
And we don't even have a custom size. Like ours is like a standard size.
And it's standard size, you're still paying that. So maybe in the future, I built this in a way where we could just pop this off and easily replace it, because it's built on a curb and you just drop it on that curb and screw it in place. So, we could replace it in the future, but for now, this will do. The biggest thing is air tightness for heat loss. So as long as it's airtight, it doesn't have as good of a performance, but that's all right if it's airtight. So, and it's also a very small area compared to what the windows take up. Probably 40% of our walls are windows, and in the roof, maybe 5% or even less than that is windows. So we have a lot more wall space or ceiling space than window space in there. So that was one of the biggest things. And then the second biggest thing for making this place more energy efficient is this ceiling right here. As you can see, they're all individual little pieces of wood that are nailed in. And as you can imagine, in between them and where they connect to the beams, there are all these little gaps where hot air, as it rises, can just get up and get out of the roof and into the environment, which will actually create this stack effect where it's gonna be really, really hot up there and cold on the floor because the heat is just constantly disappearing and cold air is being drawn into the building from below. So we had to stop that basically to make our roof here more energy efficient. So what we did is when we replaced the roof, we actually ripped the sheeting off, took the insulation out so that we were on the other side of this roof. And what I did is I dropped 1-inch foam in there and then I taped it to the wooden beams that would go across. And what that did is it made it airtight. So right behind this wood, there's 1 inch of foam, which will add an extra bit of insulation as well and would make it airtight.
And talk about some of this foam did you put that in from up in the ceiling or from the roof? Or?
So that's why you see some of this tape hanging down here. So I wanted to prevent some of this foam from squeezing out. As you can see here, you can see a little bit of that foam squeezing out. So you have to remove that again or even put a piece of trim there. Up there was just a lot of penetrations through a roof, like little outlet boxes or light boxes like that, where the smoke detector is up there. There's just lots of holes in it. So in order to seal those, and especially here where the ceiling arrives at a beam, I used some spray foam in order to seal that.
You can see it a lot over here in particular.
Yeah, right there you could see it. It was coming out, and that's actually missing quite a big piece of trim that's actually going to cover that. And that darker stuff that you see there, that black, that is some of the foam and some of the tape that we used to seal it. So you could see that there's just no air that can escape through here anymore, which results in, I mean, I don't think the heater is on right now because like even on a hot day like this,
we get a lot of passive solar.
I get a lot of like sunlight coming in, heating all this up.
And actually what's smart about this, the fact that this is on the southern side, is that the sun is almost too high in the summer, right? And so it kind of blocks a little bit.
Yeah,
in the
so
winter,
this is, what do you call that? It's like a passive
solar.
Passive solar? It could be passive solar. It's basically designed in a way where you have these large windows facing the south so that in the summer months, and it has an overhang, in the summer when the sun is high in the sky, you barely get any sunlight into the room. So
the sun is, the overhang almost blocks it.
The overhang blocks it, and then you have a window, but the sun is not heating it up. In the winter, like it is now, the sun is lower in the sky, so it actually brings in, I mean, there's light all the way back here on this wall. And I actually did a architectural, I put a 3D model. Yeah, I put a 3D model in an architectural software to figure out like how this would work with the light, what kind of light we would get on this wall in the winter compared to the summer. And it works. Like right now, this entire room is being heated up for free. And you know, now that we have everything airtight, it keeps all the hot air in this building. So that's, I would say, the main two things. And then the third thing would be adding more insulation, which we're gonna do in the basement. Our basement walls are basically just concrete. Even though they're buried and the soil is like a stable temperature, it is beneficial to add some insulation to keep the hot, humid air in the building versus having it seep through the wall.
And we could actually see the results of it because of on the roof and where the snow melts and where it doesn't.
So this section here on the end does not have a cedar plank roof. It has drywall, and drywall is already airtight. So when I took the roof up, I only took it up to the point where the wood would stop. This section with the drywall, I didn't feel the need to take up because the drywall itself is already an air barrier. Now, what we could see now is when it snows and, it starts to melt, we could see that the side of the roof that has the extra insulation and is more airtight, it takes longer to melt the snow off the roof than the side that actually has no extra insulation. And that is very fascinating to see. I still have to seal some of the air gaps that are up there to make sure that the hot air doesn't leave the building. Because again, if I take that piece of trim off that you see there, I mean, you could kind of see it up there. I'm not sure if you can catch that. You can't go. You gotta flip around.
Oh, well, I could see it.
If you look up there, that black little line, there's an air gap. And a lot of air can move through that. And a lot of moisture can move through that too. If it's very humid in the house in the winter and it's very dry outside, now you have a lot of moisture that's getting into the insulation that's in your roof. So in order to stop some of that, we're gonna take we're gonna make an effort to actually seal that up. So I'll pop that piece of trim off, seal that, and then put the trim back, and then it should perform better. So then the third thing would be insulation, and then with introducing these new 3 things to the building, we now have a problem because we basically live in an enclosed plastic bag, if you will, where there's no fresh air getting in. And in order to overcome that, we are going to install an ERV system, which is basically an energy recovering ventilator, which makes sure that there's enough fresh air coming into the building and that all the stale air is leaving the building. And as these 2 streams are like leaving the house and entering the house, they recover the energy. So the hot air gives off about 90% or 95% of its energy to the cold incoming air. And that way you're not losing a lot of your heat, but you are getting fresh air into the building. And that air also gets filtered so that if there's pollutants in the air outside, we're gonna get fresh filtered air on the inside. And that's, I believe, a more comfortable place to live that is more energy efficient. It's gonna cost us less money to maintain and heat this house. And right now it's being heated by the sun, so that's free heat. And we're able to capture that better because we're able to hold on to the air instead of it leaving. So these are all things that I'm thinking about as far as it's costing a little bit money up front, but we are saving more money over time as we are getting a more energy efficient structure without having to heat it much. So, oftentimes there's a conversation about what we heat our houses with. People heat their houses with wood stoves, or they use propane, or they even use electric with some
Natural
of these
gas,
mini splits that you have on the wall. At the point where you're making your house more energy efficient, you're improving the insulation. It almost doesn't matter what you heat your house with anymore, because at that point you need very little heat to be able to heat it or cool it, and that's going to be beneficial in no matter what you use to heat your home with. We could grab some fallen tree branches out of the forest and heat our house with it in a wood stove. Or we use very little bit of electricity in order to run a mini split, and we could heat the house or cool the house. So there's a lot of options that you then have as far as heating and cooling when you reduce that burden of the energy that it needs to do that. So now that we got the energy efficiency dialed in, let's talk a little bit about the layout. So this room that we're standing in now, we want to make that the mud room. There's about 150 people here staying at the moment. That explains all the shoes. And the idea that we want, right now, the problem is that the biggest problem is we don't really have a bathroom to go to if we're working outside. The way you have to go to the bathroom is you have to come into the house, go into the bedroom, and then find the bathroom there.
And it's weird going through someone else's bedroom to go to the bathroom.
It's weird to go through someone else's, or the person who's staying there. It's weird to also have to, you don't want to take your shoes off and drag all that stuff through the house. So the one big thing that this house needed is a more public kind of bathroom unit that is more accessible. So we constructed one out of foam.
This will give us a sense of the size.
Yeah, so this is kind of where we are planning to put it, and that way you could come right in from outside, turn around here, and you go to the bathroom. So it's a 3x5 space, very small. And what we like to do always is make sure we kind of visualize what it would feel like to have something here, because when we put up some walls, it changes the space. So what we do is we just grab some foam board. This is the same foam that actually went into the roof to add extra insulation. It's going to be, these are 4 feet, so you can see that this wall is kind of indented because it's about a foot sticking out here, but it gives us a rough idea what this will feel like when it's here.
This will just basically be a toilet and a sink.
Yeah. That way, you don't have to walk into someone's bedroom in order to go to the bathroom. So,
and then if we do like garden tours or something, we could offer this.
Yeah, people can
as a
come
public
use this.
space.
A contractor who works here or whatever can use this. Now then, with that also comes the washer and the dryer. Right now, the washer and the dryer is in the kitchen. You can see it here. Here are all the guts of it. Electric, drain pipe, water. The washer and dryer we want to put over here in this corner. And you could basically see this wooden chair here will kind of define the corner of it. So then you have still quite a bit of space here to
God,
come
we look
into
like
the room.
hoarders.
Oh, it's a mess. What do you want? It's like there's no place for it. We're literally taking up the house. Luckily,
Is that your laser pointer
Where?
that you're holding in your left hand?
No, this is just a light, so you can see it better.
Okay.
So this is where a little box goes for the washer and dryer. And basically, it makes it very easy because it's right near our electric panel. It's right near to our septic. It's right near to an exterior wall, which makes it easy to exhaust the hot air from the dryer. And that way, it's just very easy to install it there.
Yeah, and I think this becomes more of a utilitarian room, essentially.
Yeah, it's where you...
And a place to view birds.
And a place to view birds. So right here, again, these boxes are not here just randomly, although it just looks like we just dumped everything here that we, had to get rid of.
I think these are my clothes from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Boxes.
So these boxes act as, and this piece of plywood that's all warped now because it's so dry in here, this acts as a little seating area. So this will be a seating area where you can come in, you can kick off your shoes, you can store your shoes underneath where those boxes are right now.
Yeah.
And then what's nice is that we can have a pillow on each end of this seat, and then you can really enjoy this view here of the gardens that Summer has put in. And you could see, it's kind of like an overview of the property. You could see the barn, you could see the meadow house, you see the big oak tree, you could see the pathway, you see all the gardens. And these are all layers. You have this tree coming in on the side. So it's a beautiful picture frame window here where you could really easily sit here and relax. And that's kind of our vision for this mud room. Another thing that we wanted to do is to make this space kind of blend into the space that's on the other side of this wall, is we decided to put some windows up in here. And this is not just a random decision. There's another wall in this building that you could see in the living room that has those kinds of windows. So it essentially mirrors what's here over there. And what that will do is it will really make these two spaces feel like more like one space. And it opens it up. You could see the beams through the glass, and I think it will be really beautiful. We have all kinds of ideas to put plants up on here that are kind of just taking up and growing up. So that way you can see through those windows, you can see all those plants basically growing up above the cabinets. And all that space up there is gonna get used.
Hopefully we have more irrigation because these plants are looking a little dry.
Yes, so actually a cool thing I wanna try is I wanna waterproof the tops of these cabinets and make kind of a bathtub thing in there so that you can actually water it without damaging the
cabinets.
Yeah, and maybe we'll make drip irrigation up there too, depending on that, what we could do.
So there'll be some tweaking. I think it's been challenging for us, kind of like living between multiple places and having renovation happening at all different times. I think anybody who's lived through renovation, even in my Brooklyn apartment, I've been through renovation that lasted for 4 years. I mean, it's just, you can't organize yourself. You can't get into a routine of things. Things are always messy and dirty.
Yeah.
You want to pull out your hair sometimes. But.
That's why downstairs we're renovating first and then up here. Although there are a couple things like those walls up there that will have to be done. but it's not to a point here quite yet.
Where it's unlivable.
Where it's unlivable. Right now it's still very functional, even though it's a mess.
Downstairs
is absolutely unlivable. So thinking about the rest of some of this layout, the stairs, we kind of have this staircase here in the middle of the room. And this is kind of an interesting design decision from whoever put this in here. The first thing that a builder told me, actually Sue, who's building Amabel in Ithaca, she came in and was like, oh, I hate when people do that. They put the stairs right in the middle of the room. They should have put it right here along this wall, and it would be out of the way, and you'd have this huge open area here. And first I just didn't want to hear it, and then I just kind of let it sink in and started considering it and went through the process of like, what would it take? What are the pros and cons of switching the stairs? Eventually we decided to leave it where it is because of a lot of reasons. There's just, the layout downstairs works out really well with the stairs being here. Upstairs, it's a little more challenging to make the layout work because this room becomes so small and it really breaks up the open space that's up here. So, you know, our living room is kind of a weird shape, and the dining room is kind of a weird shape. But I think what we've done over the last 2 days is we've kind of figured out and made a design that works well for these two rooms so that it's okay to leave the stairs here. The stairs is quite a fixed thing. We're also gonna leave the kitchen as is because it's, why do anything with it? It looks great. The weird thing about the way that the house is built here is if you stand over here, is this door here. And the reason why this door is so far to the left, and you have to make kind of this like S-curve in here, is because of this pipe you see in that wall. Mm-hmm. And that's the vent pipe for the plumbing. So they cannot go any further to the right because you have all that stuff for the washer and the dryer, which is right here. So the only place this door could go is right there. Now, in order to fix this kind of layout in my mind, what I want to do is I want to line up this stairs with a door that will also be lined up with the door to the bathroom, and that then will also be lined up with the window that's in the wall over there in the bathroom, so that everything is kind of aligned, and this becomes like kind of the main walking path through the whole house. So when you come in, you kick your shoes off, you take a slight right, and then you're in the center highway here, which will bring you to the kitchen, the dining room, the living room, and have access to those two doors on each side. And this becomes kind of like the center highway for the whole building. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to move the washer and dryer, which I already showed you where it's gonna go, and we have to make that pipe go in a different direction, which is gonna be challenging because now there's also a window going in there on the top. So that pipe will have to snake around a window and a door.
And you could do 90 degrees in
yeah,
a vent
so
pipe.
The only thing that will travel through that is air. Air needs to be able to come in to that pipe from outside, and you can make that thing snake in all kinds of different methods as long as you don't have it go uphill.
Yeah, if it were a plumbing pipe, it would be a different story.
Yeah, if there were water that was going through it, that would be challenging. But still, you want to make sure that it all slopes down so that if ever rain or water gets in there, it's able to drain out to the bottom. So we don't want to create like a uphill rise in that. So I probably have to go down to the right, go down, over to the left, and drop down. So this door, we're planning to put right here. And that allows us the opportunity to then take these shelves that you see here and continue those along this wall here. And that might raise a question like, well, what are you gonna do with this door that's here? Well, right now, this door is a door to one of the bedrooms. And it's kind of strange because you're in the kitchen. As soon as you get out of this door, you're like in the kitchen room. So what we're gonna do with this door is we're gonna move it a little bit further down the wall into the mudroom. That way, you can get into the building and go immediately into this room, and you don't have to like go through a kitchen in order to get to it. On the other side of the wall, it's also easier, it's a better place for you to enter the room, because right now, you're entering the room and you're right there where the bed is. And it's just less, from a feng shui perspective, it's better if that door opens up in a place where there's more like the office part of the room. So we're also changing that. So the door will eventually go here, which is center on this window. Careful, Summer might fall down during this episode at some point.
Too much stuff in the way.
It's like walking backwards, you're also gonna trip on something. So it will be center on this window, so when you come out of the room, you'll be greeted with this beautiful view of the gardens. And you have a decision. If you wanted to go outside, you could do that here. Or if you wanted to go into the rest of the house, you could do that here. So the alignment of this door here fixes a lot of just weird issues that you have. Like, think about coming home here with a bunch of groceries. You have to go through the door. You got to go all the way to the right, squeeze yourself through this like 30-inch opening here, and then go all the way to the left here to like come into the room. It's much better if that was more streamlined. The opening was bigger and it was more aligned with everything. So that's kind of what we're looking to achieve here. And that's pretty much it for upstairs.
Welcome to the dungeon. Yeah, come on down.
Are you down there?
I'm down here. Help me.
I can't see you.
Scary down here.
So this stairs is actually quite new. The previous homeowner had renovated this and took the old stairs out and put this like steel, super modern staircase in.
Yeah, it's kind of cool looking,
It's kind of cool. So we'll definitely keep that. There's no need to replace that. But the reason we know that it's a renovation is because some of the tiles underneath it were missing. I broke that up, so that wasn't like that. But underneath the stairs it was missing, and that tells us, hey, there was a different kind of stairs down here
And
before.
this used to be a garage, right?
Well, hold on. So there's a couple sections here. So here where you could see some of the tiles still, this used to be the entrance to a bathroom. So there was like a wall here and a wall here, and there was a bathroom in here. And there were some closets on this side. So this was all open mostly. And then that back there behind Summer is the mechanical room. And then here used to be the garage. And they also renovated that into a room to stay in, but they kept this section of the room here as kind of a garage and storage, because the old garage door used to be right here. So what we're gonna do here is we already took this wall out because the mice have absolutely taken over this whole area here. The amount of mice that were running through the ceilings and in the walls is insane. So we are also sealing up all the holes. And I thought I had it sealed up, and then I still caught some mice inside.
You thought wrong.
Somehow they're getting in, and I don't know how. And I've heard them behind the electrical panel the other day, which I can't really get to. So when I close this up, I gotta be really careful to make sure that I close every single gap that they could potentially come through. Plus, I wanna make sure that I isolate each single opening or bay that they could potentially live in, so that if they make it into one bay, say they make it into the ceiling bay here, they're not able to get into the wall, or they're not able to get into this section. So as you can see right now, we have a bunch of holes in here where a bunch of pipes go through, so I'll have to seal those off. And same for like where an electrical wire will go from the ceiling to the wall, I'll have to make sure that that's sealed. So that's kind of what we're working on in here. It's gonna be one big bedroom, and this area here is gonna be where the bathroom goes now.
Yeah, so each will be a master bedroom essentially here.
Yes, and before that bathroom used to be outside this room, but now we're bringing it in here.
And that bathroom was virtually unusable.
It was a gross bathroom. All the plumbing had to be above the floor, so they had to raise it up, which there's not a lot of space here, so that allowed very little room. It's very claustrophobic in there. But we have a benefit because this floor here, it drops down like 5 inches. So we can actually do some plumbing in there and keep the floor the same level, which is great. It's gonna work out perfectly.
Yeah, it's gonna work out really well.
So this will be its own room, And then in here, Summer had the great idea to make a very cozy space and a speakeasy.
Like a speakeasy vibe, but
Yeah.
without the alcohol. More like tea,
More like tea
apothecary,
and herbs.
cheese grotto, herbs. Yeah.
Now you can actually quickly see here one of the reasons why we left the staircase where it is instead of moving it to the wall there is there's still some light that's coming through here.
I mean, yeah, look at it. It's beautiful.
And it's, because this area here is a very dark space. But if you could see, the light makes it all the way out to here. So it's gonna make this a little bit less dark. But what we're imagining down here is a speakeasy with a bar, seating, books,
Big
cozy
apothecary
vibes,
in the back.
big shelves
Seating
with
areas for folks.
with herbs, books.
Maybe like a little electrical
Fireplace
over here.
Yeah.
Books underneath the stairwell.
Underneath the staircase.
And then you could sneak a path behind here. And then this would essentially be, what is it going to be, Sander?
It's going to be the cinema room.
Yeah.
Well, just a room to display, just to hang out in, but also to watch a film or a video that maybe we've made or someone has made, or just like watching a normal film.
Old films, whatever.
Yeah. So in here, there's actually quite some, let's talk about the challenges in here. So first of all, these concrete walls, they're all really dry. There's barely any moisture or cracks in them, which is really great news because that really, reduces the amount of work for me. We're just gonna insulate this better because the soil is probably right around here. So this is exposed to the air, soil. And what we have is we have a lot of cracks and openings here that you can see. If I stick my hand in here, it's really cold. So there's a lot of cold air that's making its way through here. So one of the things that I want to do is make sure that that's all blocked off and that we're better insulated down here. Another issue that we have is our floor joists are not in such good shape. Like if you come over here, you could see what's happening here.
Yeah, that one's cracked.
Because this is such a long span, this is a 2x12, it's starting to split. Look at that. I can even push it with my hands. You see how it's moving?
Yeah.
So what I'll probably have to do is fix this somehow. I have to jack it up, add glue and more screws and then more nails into the rest of the wood here to really stabilize that and make sure it doesn't move. There's also just a lot of holes that got drilled through here. I might beef up some of these joists in order to make them stronger.
It's always crazy to me to see the nails coming through, like from...
Yeah, so that's not great because they tried to nail the subfloor down,
Yeah.
but they missed the joists.
Yeah.
So that you now know that section there is not attached.
Rookie mistake.
Well, when you're nailing it in, you don't really know where the joists are, so you're like just shooting and hoping that you're gonna hit it. And then there's also other things here, for example, that you could see this massive crack here in the joist. You gotta come to this side. Because they put a plumbing pipe through here and they put it so close to the edge, you gotta imagine this beam has a lot of tension on the bottom.
Right next to a knot. It looks like there's a knot right there.
Yeah, that's really participating into this thing cracking too. So what's happening is that as that beam is here, it's putting a lot of weight on the top of it, and it basically stretches the bottom of that beam so much that if you do anything like cut a hole or have a knot there, it just splits open and it wants to like just fall apart and crack. The only reason it's not doing that is probably because it's all kind of tied together by this plywood and some of the other joists.
Why don't you talk about the kitchen island as well?
Yeah, so what we're gonna do here is that the kitchen island, the kitchen is also a renovation, because the original kitchen was much smaller. What happened? Kids moved out, parents stayed home alone, they wanted a bigger kitchen, so they put this massive island in, and what do we have as a countertop? Like this heavy stone.
Granite, it's granite.
Stone. And it's putting so much freaking weight on these joists that even though this is like more than enough for code, for building code, it is putting so much stress on these joists that these are like bowing down a little bit. So we got basically this like trampoline effect of the kitchen island above us pushing down on these joists, making them bend a little bit. So it creates a dip in the floor upstairs, and it also makes these kind of bow.
Even though everything is level on the countertop upstairs.
Yeah, which might be due to the part that, the whole thing is kind of sinking together. or it was already bowed and then they just installed the kitchen's level on top of that. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna try to put a beam across all of these, jack it up on two sides, make sure I have enough weight load on the bottom spread out so it's not just pinpointed on our concrete floor. And then kind of like raise this up to where it's gotta be, see if it levels out the top, and then I'm gonna reinforce some of these joists by adding, like they call it sistering. You add basically a sister beam next to it and attach it really well to help carry some of that weight. And that will hopefully get the bounce out of this floor.
And the sister doesn't have to go all the way to the ends, right?
Apparently not. So
yeah.
According to, talking with Sue, it's good if it goes from one end to the other, but you don't really have to, because if you really glue it and nail it in and attach it well, it's just gonna reinforce. It's gonna double up the strength on that point. And we don't have to go to full width either. We could get a 2x8, and that will probably fit right above some of these pipes, so then we don't have to take any of the pipes out. So that's a big project. We're gonna restructure some of these to make the floor a lot stronger and more flat. They had walls here, of course, before, which helped pick up some of the weight that was coming down, but those walls were framed like at an angle. So it wasn't really supporting anything.
Yeah, they're not really
just
structural walls.
Yeah, it was just kind of filler strips for whatever was here. From this corner here to that beam, this beam is 1/2 inch lower.
Wow.
This one's an inch lower. This one's 3/4 lower. This one's 13/16 lower. So you can see there's quite a big of a dip, and they're all different. So just gonna reinforce this section here, which is only a small section of the house, luckily. So it's not like I have to do it to the whole building. We probably would have not had this problem if they used these wooden I-beams called TJIs. Those are like engineered lumber, and they would have been much straighter. The risk with working with with this just solid wood is that it just bends, warps, twists, and all that
cracks,
stuff.
Yeah.
And we have TJIs in the ceiling. They just didn't spend the money to make it good here. And this is actually a really good example of some of our philosophy, that when we touch anything, we want to make sure it's up to the best standard that we can make it. Because this is a great example. 30 years down the road, what are you going to be left with? What are you going to end up with? Now our floor goes like this through the house based on what's on it. And that's just going to be really hard to restore at a point like this. You have to really get in there and try to reinforce and make it stronger. So the best way to fix this would be to rip everything out and put TJI joist in so it would be strong forever. But that's not very realistic at this point anymore. When they were building this, then it would have been really realistic to do that. But unfortunately they didn't, so.
Well, it's really interesting to see it all like with the bones out. And we will continue forward and share a bit more with like our design in future videos, but at least this gives you an idea of what we're working with and the big project that we've stepped into. And why did we take everything down? Because we just wanted to make sure that we knew what was behind the walls and what was behind the ceiling. And for example, here I found like a ton of like bird seed and food and all kinds of nesting materials up here. And the mice have just gotten in and just tore this place apart. So what we're gonna do is make sure that they're not able to get in and destroy our insulation. And there's been so many mice that have just died in the walls, and it must have, like, we had it happen once to us. That's kind of triggered us demoing that wall down there. Mm-hmm. If a mouse dies behind your wall, or you're using poison to trap the mice, they're gonna eventually die. It's gonna stink for like a week or 2 weeks. You're just gonna smell that because it's just behind your walls. And that's just like, we wanna seal everything up and be conscious that, you know, they can run along here, they can run and crawl through these little gaps. So yeah, we want to make it predator proof on the inside and then have like habitat on the outside. Yep. And yeah, thank you, Sander. This is really elucidating, and it's going to be a big project, but I think we're going to be up for it. Here's to 2024.
Well, we have no choice now.
No choice, no going back.
Can't go back now.